Hello, and thank you for attending this session. Yeah, I wrote that. Advancing Open Educational Practices to Foster Student Engagement. I'm Kristina M, the English and Communication Librarian at Temple University, a large, urban, state-affiliated university located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm also an open education advocate at my campus, providing outreach to the campus community around open education, as well as helping to manage our university's long-standing OER grant program, known as the Textbook Affordability Project. In a nutshell, I'm a research and instruction librarian who is invested in open education and excited by the possibilities open educational practices offer, both for my own instructional efforts as well as my ongoing collaboration and engagement with faculty. This session is oriented toward course instructors as well as individuals who work closely with course instructors, providing varying levels of assignment design support, such as librarians and instructional designers. Specifically, I'll discuss what open educational practices are, making connections with information literacy. I'll highlight the characteristics of renewable assignments, and I'll offer some suggestions for designing effective assignments involving Wikipedia editing. Know that some of the information shared in this session is based on experiences gained from a faculty-librarian collaboration over the course of 4 years and 2 courses in which assignments involving Wikipedia editing occurred. To learn more about the courses and the lessons learned from each, I encourage you to take a look at the chapter, Yeah, I wrote that, incorporating critical information literacy to build community inside and outside of Wikipedia, in the open access book, Wikipedia and Academic Libraries, a Global Project, published by Maze Books, an imprint of Michigan Publishing Services. With that said, let's get started. Open educational practices ask us to consider not only what we teach with, but also how we teach. Open educational practices are a pedagogy of inviting and immersing students in the co-creation of knowledge in a course, ultimately shaping the public knowledge commons of which they are a part, as DeRosa and Jean-Guiani argue, by using participatory technologies through the creation, use, and reuse of open educational resources. Open educational practices have an ethos of openness, sharing, and equity, both in terms of the what you teach with, and more importantly, how you teach. For example, some faculty make their syllabi public for others to learn from and remix. Others offer student opportunities to modify the syllabus. These practices are learner-centered and, as Bali argues, social justice-oriented, addressing issues of open access to educational materials, equitable participation in knowledge creation, as well as diverse representation in educational materials. Now, if those definitions seem a bit broad or abstract, let's consider open educational practices in terms of some questions we can ask ourselves. In thinking about the content of course materials used, who is represented in them? Whose stories are told and not told? How are those individuals and/or communities represented? Are there potential biases? Do those representations reflect who is in the course? And can those learners even access the course materials? Taking the who is in the course aspect further, we can ask questions related to student agency, like what choices can students make about the course or assignments? For example, can students have a say in what is covered or in any course policies, like lateness? Are students invited to be part of the teaching process, constructing their own learning pathways, like engaging in peer review or working collaboratively, or creating learning objects that can be reused in subsequent courses? And can the students have a say in whether what they produce for the course is made public and shared? Can they opt out, use a pseudonym, or something else? Now, one kind of open educational practice is the design of renewable assignments. So what are renewable assignments? Renewable assignments add value to the world, contributing to the public good. These types of assignments challenge the notion that students must passively consume and regurgitate knowledge in a Freudian banking model sense, and instead encourage students to actively participate and contribute to the larger knowledge commons. Renewable assignments are the opposite of, say, the quintessential final research paper, which students and faculty know will likely be tossed in the recycle bin once the semester is over. Scholar David Wiley even calls these types of assignments disposable. Students are more likely to invest effort and thought with renewable assignments because 1, they are engaged in content creation. 2, they perceive that the products of their work will endure long after the class is completed. And 3, they recognize that their work will be valued by a wider audience. Scholars Wiley and Hilton argue that there is a spectrum between disposable and renewable assignments, as demonstrated by this chart. Some may be familiar with assignments that are somewhat similar to renewable ones, like authentic assignments or constructionist assignments, which have that project-based learn-by-doing connection in which students are asked to do the kinds of things that the course of study is preparing them to do in the real world. Renewable assignments move beyond authentic and constructionist assignments in that the work produced is open and available to a wider public for use and reuse. They are like living assignments because they can continue to grow and develop. Renewable assignments promote learning goals for information literacy, which is also learner-centric and social justice-oriented. The 2016 ACRL document Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education reimagined the definition of information literacy, taking into consideration the complexity of the modern information world and the increasing role of students as information producers. The 4 components that make up the definition of information literacy, so reflective discovery, production and value, creating new knowledge, and ethical participation, emphasize that information is both personal and social. These 4 components also place a greater emphasis on the journey of learners and their interactions with one another, requiring engagement with an ever-changing information ecosystem. And the 6 frames included in the framework that represent core concepts of information literacy, so authority is constructed and contextual, information creation as a process, information has value, research as inquiry, scholarship as conversation, and searching as strategic exploration, reflect a learner-centric nature with their corresponding knowledge practices and dispositions. These encourage a bit of discomfort and struggle among learners as they cross thresholds to increase their own understandings. The framework provides a foundation for thinking of information literacy as a vehicle for social justice, emphasizing concepts like bias, privilege, power, and marginalization when it comes to how information is produced and disseminated. As agents of social justice, students need to learn about both their rights and their responsibilities. One example is thinking about the value of information as a commodity. To illustrate, students have access to an enormous amount of subscription-based information, and that access largely disappears after they graduate. We can challenge students to examine their own information privilege and think about how they can leverage that privilege. The framework highlights that 21st century learners are producers of information, not just consumers. While we've always taught students to acknowledge others' ideas through proper citation, how can we foster students to think of themselves as creators who have author rights of their own? This requires increased emphasis on concepts like copyright, fair use, Creative Commons, and the public domain. Thinking of themselves as creators can also shift their relationship to authority, making its constructed and contextual nature feel more real. Students learn to question authority as an issue of equity. Who gets to have authority? Are the authorities representative of the communities they address? And as active agents, what are students' roles in ensuring that their work moves us toward greater social justice, building an information ecosystem that is more diverse and inclusive? Information literacy, then, provides a necessary component for student success in renewable assignments and open educational practices more broadly. So with that backdrop, what do open educational practices, renewable assignments, and information literacy have to do with Wikipedia? Well, the wildly popular, freely accessible encyclopedia is based on ideas surrounding openness and collaboration. So anyone can access it, anyone can edit it, and anyone can see what those edits were, and oftentimes who made them through the View History feature. The community of Wikipedians editing Wikipedia demonstrates to students how knowledge is constructed and made accessible in open systems. Editing Wikipedia also provides students an infrastructure for publishing information on topics that are underrepresented in traditional publishing or not adequately covered by mainstream media. And it gets students practicing writing for a real-world audience from a neutral point of view while providing sufficient evidence. As an academic librarian, I like the idea of students editing Wikipedia because it actively demonstrates to students that research is a community building process, that scholarship is a conversation, and that authority is constructed and contextual. Ultimately, though, I think Wikipedia editing permits diverse stories, histories, and contributors to become visible while promoting creative expression, connection, and collaboration among learners. Wikipedia is not all rainbows and unicorns, of course. A closer look at the content and workings of Wikipedia reveals inequalities which have been noted by scholars and the popular press. For example, studies have found that Wikipedia editors tend to be young, male, English-speaking, educated, technologically aware, and wealthy enough to have the spare time for editing. This can lead to some potential biases in terms of the topics presented and the ways in which they are misrepresented. For example, an overemphasis on pop culture, technology, and current events topics, favoring certain ethnicities or majority religions, gender biases, and uneven geographic distribution of article topics. For example, Africa is the most underrepresented. Okay. Let's talk about two available infrastructures to engage students in editing Wikipedia. The first are editathons. Now, these are social events where a group of people come together to edit and improve Wikipedia articles. Sometimes the editathons are focused around a theme, like art and feminism, Black artists, women in science, or environmental issues. There's often basic editing training for new editors involved. And Wikipedia even offers a lot of how to run and plan an editathon materials. Editathons are often put on by libraries, galleries, archives, and museums. For example, here at Temple University, the libraries has hosted editathons both in person and online. Students can participate in or even organize their own editathons, engaging with a live community. This was how I actually began collaborating with a course instructor on a Wikipedia assignment in 2018. The instructor was teaching an LGBTQ media representation course the same semester our library was hosting an art and feminism editathon, and she wanted to find a way to have her students participate. We worked together to come up with a single, smallish assignment students could complete during the in-person editathon. We identified a list of Wikipedia articles related to the course that needed improvement, considered logistics for preparing the students in terms of how much behind-the-scenes Wikipedia knowledge they needed, and whether this would be an individual or group assignment. On the day of the editathon, students attended the event making live edits. connecting with a broader Wikipedia editing community, including other campus and local community members. The first go-around felt a little rushed, especially as students needed to be primed for collaborating and editing rather quickly early on in the semester. But the Editathon gave the edits a sense of purpose, as students were part of an event larger than the class itself, as expressed by this student's exclamation-heavy comment in their post-event written reflection. The second infrastructure is the WikiEDU program, which offers free services to assist those interested in incorporating Wikipedia-based assignments into the classroom. Their services include online tutorials for both instructors and students, exercises, and instructional design consultations. For the last 6 semesters, I've worked with the same course instructor to integrate Wikipedia editing as a semester-long project in a different course called Technology and Culture. The subject matter of this course more easily allows Wikipedia editing to become a semester-long project, in which students can choose an article of their own from a prepared list to enhance or create, conduct original research, and draft content in their sandboxes, all while completing weekly WikiEDU trainings scaffolded to connect with course topics, like access to information, power and representation in online spaces, and intellectual property in the digital era. Throughout the semester, I meet with students individually in consultations, and then visit their class at the end of the semester for a debriefing session on the overall Wikipedia editing experience. WikiEDU also provides access to a dashboard tool, which can help track projects and student progress over a semester, and help demonstrate impact, as can be seen from the screenshot in which the most recent section of this course has had their articles viewed an astounding 2.3 million times. So what are some Wikipedia assignment options and best practices? Know that editing Wikipedia doesn't have to only be about writing content or creating new articles from scratch. There are other ways students can make meaningful contributions to Wikipedia, from simply adding citations to articles needing reliable sources, compiling lists of further readings, to linking content to other Wikipedia articles or outside sources. Translating articles is also another option, whether in a language class or any class in which there are students who have additional language skills. And for non-writing options, consider having students add existing media to articles or contribute their own media like photos, sound recordings, or videos to Wikimedia. These types of Wikipedia activities can range from a small assignment to a semester-long project. If you're just starting out, I'd encourage starting small and building over time. For example, perhaps make collaborative edits to a single article as a class, after identifying one that has gaps or needs. Later, maybe scaffold up to students being responsible for expanding or creating their own articles. Be sure to build in time related to teaching students how to use Wikipedia's platform on the back end, setting up accounts, drafting in the sandbox, and making edits. Don't assume that they'll know how to do this just because they're digital natives, or that they'll just do it outside of class without prompting. And consider how issues of visibility and invisibility, misrepresentation, bias, and misinformation intersect with the course's subject matter. Further, plan to discuss the role and use of reliable sources as evidence in Wikipedia. And consider how conversations around students as creators and their author rights may tie in. The structure and form of Wikipedia assignments, or even renewable assignments more broadly, may encourage different assessment approaches. A few options include incorporating some of the framework's dispositions from select frames as learning outcomes. Focus on the overall process more than just the end product. For example, what are some of the scaffolded steps engaged in during the project, and how do they meet the learning goals? Incorporate student reflections aimed at different audiences to emphasize student participation and levels of engagement. For example, have students discuss writing within and for a community, their continued use of Wikipedia following the course, etc. Recognize that not all students may wish to make their work publicly available, so provide options. For example, can they share or submit in another way, such as submitting what they had posted in their Wikipedia sandbox? And have students collaboratively identify criteria for assessing, designing rubrics, and/or participating in peer review. So, what do students think of these kinds of assignments? In both in-class and written end of the semester reflections, students have frequently commented on the "unlike anything I've ever done before" aspect, describing feelings of fulfillment, pride, and substantiality in the work they contributed that was, quote, actually going to be seen and appreciated by real people beyond our classroom, end quote. Other students have articulated their Wikipedia contributions in relation to their identities, of making visible what was once invisible. As this student comments, quote, "As a Hispanic woman, I feel a responsibility to contribute information from a perspective that is lacking," end quote. Of course, not everyone has thought it a great experience, and that's all right. Some students, like this one here, struggle with the logistics of editing Wikipedia. Others become frustrated when they see that their contributions have been edited or removed for whatever reason. And some admit that these types of assignments are hard or stressful because they are so different than what they're usually asked to do, or that they do not consider themselves expert enough to contribute on the topic. We may want to ask ourselves, is that kind of challenge or threshold okay? Does it lead to growth or new perspectives? Okay, so pull back for a moment, pause this recording, and reflect on the questions. So if you're a course instructor, how might I incorporate Wikipedia assignments in my courses? Or if you're a librarian, how can the library help support these activities? What would be some of my initial goals for the assignment? And who could I partner with to make this happen? Thanks for attending this session. These slides are available online via the conference site. I'm happy to connect with you at this time or via email if you have any questions. Enjoy the rest of the conference.